It's been said that true character is revealed not in how people treat the powerful, but in how they treat those they believe have no power at all. My name is Victor Reynolds, and at 76 years old, I learned the painful truth about the family I had dedicated my life to building. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The moment I realized my children had betrayed me wasn't when they missed our weekly dinners. It wasn't when they stopped bringing my grandchildren to visit. It wasn't even when they began making financial decisions without consulting me after my mild stroke. It was on my 76th birthday, when my son Gregory and daughter-in-law Melissa wheeled me into Pinewood Acres Nursing Facility and informed me that they had handled everything. That this was my new home, that selling my house had been for the best. As they turned to leave, without even staying for the cake the staff had hurriedly arranged, Melissa glanced back and said, "We've got that company retreat this weekend. Dad, you understand we can't miss it. Warren would never approve our absence." Warren, my company's CEO, the man who reported directly to me through a series of shell corporations and trusts I'd established decades ago. The man who had no idea that the majority shareholder of Reynolds Enterprises was the declining old man being deposited in a nursing home on his birthday. That was the moment I decided, if my family wanted to discard me, they would learn exactly what they were throwing away. Victor's expression shifts from hurt to resolute determination. What happened in the next 6 weeks changed everything, for them, and especially for me. Transition to scenes of a tasteful office, Victor sitting behind a desk younger. I hadn't planned on keeping my ownership of Reynolds Enterprises a secret from my family. When I founded the company 40 years ago, it was a small regional distribution business with 3 employees and a second-hand delivery truck. My late wife, Eleanor, and I worked 16-hour days, sometimes sleeping on a cot in the warehouse, to fulfill urgent orders. Gregory was just 7 then, his sister Vanessa barely 5. They grew up watching the business expand, but they never showed much interest in how it operated. They enjoyed the comfortable lifestyle it provided, of course, the private schools, summer camps, eventually college without student loans. But the inner workings of logistics and supply chain management seemed to bore them profoundly. Show photos of young family, the growing business, children graduating. When Gregory studied marketing and Vanessa pursued finance, I felt hopeful they might eventually join the family business. By then, Reynolds Enterprises had grown into a regional powerhouse with over 200 employees. I'd step back, let them take the reins, and enjoy watching them build on what Eleanor and I had started. But life rarely follows the scripts we write for it. Show scenes of an elegant funeral, Victor standing alone by a casket, Eleanor's cancer. Diagnosis came the same week Vanessa graduated from business school. Within 8 months, I was a widower, adrift without the partner who had been my compass for 32 years. I threw myself into work, expanding the company further, perhaps trying to outrun my grief. Meanwhile, Gregory and Vanessa took jobs at Reynolds Enterprises but showed little ambition beyond collecting their paychecks. Gregory settled into a middle management marketing role, while Vanessa worked in accounts receivable, not even utilizing her finance degree. They seemed content to coast on the family name without understanding what built it. Show Victor in Châtillon, CEO office, looking concerned. By the time I reached 65, Reynolds Enterprises had become Reynolds Global, with operations on 3 continents and nearly 2,000 employees. I was tired. The company needed younger leadership, fresh ideas, but neither of my children had demonstrated the vision or work ethic to take over. That's when I made the decision that would eventually lead to that painful birthday revelation. Show montage of documents being signed, corporate restructuring. Hired Warren Phillips, a brilliant operations expert with an impressive track record of growing companies ethically and sustainably. I restructured Reynolds Global into a complex network of holding companies and trusts, maintaining majority ownership personally but anonymously. To the outside world, including my own children, Warren became the face of Reynolds Global, while I stepped into the background as a retired founder. Only my attorney, Sophia Liu, knew the full extent of my ownership and control, returned to Victor in the nursing home. It was supposed to be temporary, I told Sophia during her first visit to Pinewood Acres, 3 days after Gregory and Melissa left me there. The corporate restructuring, the hidden ownership, it was meant to give me time to groom them properly, to see if they would develop the necessary skills and commitment without the pressure of knowing I was watching. Sophia nodded sympathetically, her portfolio open on her lap. And instead, they took my small stroke 6 months ago as an opportunity to push me aside completely. They've been systematically cutting me out of family decisions, managing my finances for my protection, and now I gestured to the institutional surroundings, warehousing me here. While continuing to work for your company, Sophia finished, her expression darkening. Without having any idea they're actually working for you. Gregory was promoted to marketing director last year, I said quietly. Vanessa is now in corporate finance. Both positions report directly to the executive team. Both come with substantial salaries and bonuses. Paid for by you, Sophia observed. Yes, and neither of them has called since they dropped me off 3 days ago. I looked out the window, where spring flowers were blooming in carefully tended beds. Not even on my birthday. Sophia closed her portfolio with a decisive snap. So what would you like to do now, Victor? I turned back to her, the seed of a plan forming in my mind. I believe it's time for Reynolds Global to hold an emergency board meeting, one that will require the attendance of all director-level employees, and above, including Gregory and Vanessa, Sophia said, a small smile forming. Exactly. I straightened in my chair, feeling more like myself than I had in months. And I think it's time for the company's anonymous majority shareholder to make his first public appearance. Close up on Victor's face, showing quiet determination. They've forgotten who I am, Sophia. It's time to remind them. Scene opens with Victor in his private room at Pinewood Acres. Morning light streams through the window as he adjusts his tie in the mirror. I wasn't always Victor Reynolds, founder of Reynolds, global and secret majority shareholder. Once, I was just Vic, the son of a factory worker from Millfield, Ohio, a Rust Belt town where ambition was often viewed with suspicion, and leaving was considered an act of betrayal. My father worked 43 years on the assembly line at Millfield Motors, coming home each night with grease embedded so deeply in his hands that no amount of scrubbing could remove it. My mother cleaned houses for the factory managers, returning with stories of their comfortable lives that sounded like fairy tales to me. Show black and white photos of industrial town, factory workers, modest homes. Education is your ticket. Out, my mother would whisper when my father wasn't listening. Don't let this town become your prison. I took her words to heart, studying while other kids played, working odd jobs to save for college when my friends bought cars and Letterman jackets. My father called me professor with a mixture of pride and resentment, proud I might escape. The life that had worn him down, resentful that I wanted to. Victor moves to sit in his chair, picking up an old, worn book from the side table. This book, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, was my first real investment. I bought it from a second-hand bookstore when I was 16, spending 2 weeks' worth of newspaper delivery money. It became my blueprint, my vision of how commerce could transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. The local librarian, Mrs. Abernathy, noticed my interest and slipped me business magazines after she'd removed them from circulation. You're going to build something someday, she told me. I can see it in your eyes. Victor opens a photo album, shows pictures of himself as a young man in college. I was the first in my family to attend college, working 3 jobs to supplement my partial scholarship. My roommate at State University came from money, real money, the kind that had been in his family for generations, and he found my hustling both amusing and oddly admirable. "Reynolds," he'd say, watching me leave for my night shift at the campus. Security desk. "You work like you're building an empire." He didn't know how right he was. Photo of young Victor in cap and gown, standing alone. My parents didn't attend my graduation. Dad's back had given out, too many years bending over engine blocks, and Mom wouldn't leave him. I understood, but standing alone while classmates celebrated with their families, I made a promise to myself. My children would never stand alone on their important days. Oh, the irony of promises we can't keep. Victor closes the photo album. Expression thoughtful. After college, I took a job with Eastern Distribution Services, a small logistics company that handled regional shipping for manufacturers. The pay was modest, but I saw opportunity in their inefficient systems and outdated approaches. I kept a notebook of improvements, processes that could save time and money. My supervisor, Martin Greaves, wasn't interested. "We've always done it this way," he'd say, dismissing my suggestions without reading them. Don't fix what isn't broken. But it was broken. I could see it clearly. The wasted resources, the missed opportunities, the competitors slowly gaining ground. After 2 years of unheeded warnings, Eastern Distribution laid off 30% of its workforce. I was among them. Victor stands, walking to the window to look out at the grounds. That layoff was the best thing that ever happened to me. With my severance and savings, I rented a tiny warehouse on the outskirts of Claiborne, Pennsylvania. I bought a used delivery truck that broke down more often than it ran. I printed business cards at the local copy shop. Reynolds Distribution Services. Efficiency through innovation. My first client was a family-owned furniture manufacturer frustrated with their shipping options. My second was a specialty food producer trying to expand their delivery range. I charged less than the established companies, but provided more personalized service, detailed tracking, and guaranteed delivery windows, revolutionary concepts in regional shipping at the time. Show montage of early business growth, small, warehouse, single truck, Victor answering phones. I slept on a cot in the back office for the first year, showering at the gym, eating sandwiches at my desk. Every dollar went back into the business. Better equipment, technology upgrades, hiring my first employee. That's when Eleanor Morgan walked into my life. Victor smiles at the memory, picking up a framed photo of a beautiful woman with intelligent eyes and a determined expression. She came to interview for an administrative position, but within an hour, I knew she was worth far more than filing and answering phones. Eleanor had a mind for logistics that rivaled my own, and a way with people I could only envy. "Your business model is solid," she told me bluntly after reviewing our operations, "but your customer communication is abysmal. You need systems, Mr. Reynolds, not just good intentions." I hired her on the spot. Best decision I ever made. 6 months later, I promoted her to operations manager. A year after that, I proposed marriage. 2 weeks later, she accepted on one condition: full partnership in the business. Victor's expression turns both sad and fond. "I don't want to be the founder's wife," she told me. "I want to be the co-founder." We were married in the courthouse on a Tuesday morning and celebrated by signing new incorporation papers that afternoon. Reynolds Enterprise Partners was born. Eleanor brought structure to my vision. Where I saw possibilities, she created pathways. Where I built relationships, she built systems to maintain them. Together, we expanded from local to regional, from one truck to a fleet, from a rented warehouse to our own distribution center. Victor places Eleanor's photo carefully back on the nightstand. When Gregory was born, we converted a storage closet into a nursery at the main office. Eleanor would work with him sleeping in a bassinet beside her desk. 2 years later, Vanessa joined him there. Our children grew up with the business, playing beneath conference tables, coloring in unused corners of shipping manifests. They'll learn the value of hard work, Eleanor would say, watching them. They'll understand that nothing worthwhile comes easily. Victor's expression clouds slightly. Perhaps we were wrong about that. Perhaps watching isn't the same as understanding. Perhaps we should have made them struggle more, appreciate the effort behind the opportunities they enjoyed. A knock at the door interrupts Victor's thoughts. A nurse enters. "Mr. Reynolds, your physical therapist is here for your session." I nod, setting aside memories to focus on the present. Since the stroke, I've been diligent about rehabilitation, another fact my children haven't bothered to notice. They see the cane, the slight slurring when I'm tired, and assume decline rather than recovery. Their underestimation of me seems to be a pattern. As I follow the nurse into the therapy room, I reflect on the irony. My children, who grew up with every advantage, lack the one quality that drove a factory worker's son to build a global enterprise: the ability to see value where others see only weakness. They've forgotten that before I was their father, before I was a successful businessman, I was a survivor. They've mistaken my temporary physical setback for permanent surrender. Victor enters the physical therapy room, determination evident in his posture. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe. To our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for next Friday. I have 13 days to ensure I can walk into that boardroom without assistance, address the assembly without hesitation, and reclaim the legacy that is rightfully mine. "Ready to work hard today, Mr. Reynolds?" my therapist asks, setting up. "The equipment?" "More than you know," I reply, thinking not of therapy equipment but of boardrooms and betrayals. I have a very important meeting to prepare for. Close-up on Victor's face, showing resolve and focus as he begins his exercises. Scene opens with Victor sitting in the Pinewood Acres community room, observing other residents while writing in a leather-bound journal. People often assume nursing. Homes are filled with the forgetful and the forgotten. That's not entirely true, at least not at Pinewood Acres, where monthly fees exceed what many families earn in a year. Here, the residents are mostly lucid, mostly wealthy, and mostly abandoned by families too busy to visit but too image-conscious to place their elders in less prestigious facilities. I've been observing my fellow residents for a week now. Walter Simmons, former judge, whose son manages his considerable estate while visiting precisely once a month for exactly 1 hour. Diane Hughes, widow of a banking executive who speaks to her daughter daily by phone but hasn't seen her in person for over a year. Raymond Chen, retired surgeon, whose children fight over his assets while arguing he's too frail to live independently. Victor writes in his journal, voice thoughtful. They've formed a community of sorts, these elegant castaways. They play bridge on Tuesdays, attend concerts on Thursdays, discuss books they've read over gourmet dinners served on fine china. They are gracious and welcoming, offering me tips on which staff members respond best to which approaches, which activities are worth attending. What they don't discuss are their children. That subject remains taboo, a collective wound too painful to acknowledge. An elegant elderly woman approaches Victor's table. "Mr. Reynolds? I'm Beatrice Harrington. We haven't formally met, but I believe we share a mutual acquaintance. Warren. Phillips?" I hide my surprise, closing my journal. "You know Warren?" She smiles, the refined expression of someone accustomed to moving in powerful circles. "My late husband served on several boards with him. May I join you?" I gesture to the empty chair, curious. Beatrice settles across from me, arranging her silk scarf with practiced elegance. I couldn't help but overhear your daughter-in-law mention Reynolds Enterprises when they left you here, she says, direct yet diplomatic. Arthur, my husband, always spoke highly of your company's management practices. He considered Warren Phillips one of the more principled CEOs in the industry. I study her, wondering how much to reveal. Warren is indeed principled. That's why I hired him. Her eyes sharpen with interest. You hired him? Then you're not just related to the Reynolds family, you're the founder, I confirm, though that fact seems to have lost its significance to my children. Beatrice's expression shows understanding rather than pity. My son Julian was appointed to the board of Harrington Financial last year, she says, a subtle bitterness beneath her composed exterior. A position his father built over 40 years. 6 months later, he suggested I might be more comfortable in a community of peers rather than rattling around my penthouse alone. The parallels aren't lost on me. And how long have you been here? 18 months, she replies. Julian visits on major holidays, always with a photographer for the family Christmas card or Easter Instagram post. The devoted son and his elderly mother, excellent for his public image as he dismantles his father's legacy. Victor and Beatrice exchange knowing looks. Our conversation is interrupted by my phone, a rare event these days. I excuse myself, stepping into a quiet alcove to answer. Victor Reynolds, I answer formally, not recognizing the number. Mr. Reynolds, this is Linda from Dr. Abernathy's office. We've received your latest test results, and the doctor would like to discuss them with you. Could you come in tomorrow afternoon? My recent medical tests, the ones my children don't know about because they didn't bother to accompany me to the appointments. The ones that will determine if I'm cleared for more rigorous physical activity, a crucial step in my plan. I'll be there at 2, I confirm, ending the call. Victor returns to Beatrice. Medical matters, I explain vaguely. My children believe my health is declining rapidly. I see no reason to correct their misconception. Beatrice's smile turns conspiratorial. Information asymmetry, always a powerful advantage in any negotiation. She's right, of course. The less Gregory and Vanessa know about my actual condition, the more freedom I have to maneuver. Their underestimation of me creates space for my counter-move, transition to flashback. Victor in his home office 5 years earlier. The decision to restructure Reynolds Global wasn't made lightly. I remember sitting in my home office, surrounded by succession planning documents, tax strategies, and corporate governance proposals. Eleanor would have handled this differently. She would have been direct with the children, would have told them exactly what was expected if they wanted leadership roles in the company we built. But Eleanor had been gone for 3 years by then, and I found myself second-guessing my ability to judge our children's characters accurately. Show Victor looking at family photos on his desk. Gregory had always been charming but conflict-averse, preferring to smooth over problems rather than solve them. His marketing roles played to his strengths. He was personable, persuasive, skilled at creating narratives people wanted to believe. But did he have the backbone to make difficult decisions? Could he fire someone who wasn't performing? Would he risk short-term popularity for long-term stability? Vanessa was analytical and detail-oriented, meticulous about tracking expenses and investments. She could dissect a financial statement with surgical precision, but she lacked vision, the ability to see possibilities beyond spreadsheets. She executed plans flawlessly but rarely initiated them. Could she lead rather than follow? Would she recognize opportunities that couldn't be quantified in quarterly reports? Victor picks up phone, dials. Warren? Victor Reynolds here. I'd like to discuss that CEO position again, but with some modifications to the structure we initially discussed. That call set everything in motion. Within 6 months, Reynolds Global underwent a complex reorganization. On paper, ownership was distributed among holding companies, investment trusts, and overseas entities. a legitimate tax strategy that also obscured the fact that I remained the majority shareholder through a series of proxy arrangements. Warren. Phillips became CEO, accountable to a board that ultimately answered to me through channels so discreet that even most board members didn't understand the full ownership structure. My official role became founder and advisor, a position with no formal authority but tremendous influence, if I chose to exercise it. Return to present, Victor back with Beatrice. The irony, I tell Beatrice, continuing our conversation, is that I created this elaborate structure to test my children, to see if they would grow into leadership roles naturally, without the pressure of knowing I was watching. I wanted to give them room to develop their own management styles. Beatrice nods, understanding the parental impulse. And instead, they used my reduced visibility to push me further into the background. Once I was no longer CEO, they treated my opinions as outdated, my concerns as paranoia. When I had my stroke 6 months ago, they seized the opportunity to take control of my personal finances for my protection. They began making decisions about my home, my medical care, my daily life, all without meaningful consultation. Victor's expression hardened slightly. The final step was this place. I gesture around us. A convenient solution to the problem of an inconvenient father. Beatrice considers me thoughtfully. And they have no idea you still control the company? None. Warren reports to me weekly, but we've kept our arrangement strictly confidential. As far as Gregory and Vanessa know, I'm just the founder emeritus, kept on the payroll out of respect for my legacy, but with no actual authority. And what do you plan to do with this advantage? Beatrice asks, clearly intrigued. Before I can answer, a staff member approaches. Mr. Reynolds, your son Gregory is on the phone at the front desk. He says he's been trying your cell but couldn't reach you. I check my phone. 3 missed calls. Our conversation must have prevented me from noticing. Victor stands, addressing Beatrice. It seems I'm about to have my first contact with my son since he deposited me here 8 days ago, I say dryly. Perhaps we can continue this conversation. Tomorrow? Beatrice rises gracefully. I look forward to it. And Victor? Whatever you're planning, and I suspect it's something rather magnificent, I hope you'll keep me informed. It's been too long since I've witnessed justice elegantly served. Victor walks toward the front desk, his posture straighter than when Gregory last saw him. As I approach the phone, I wonder what could be important enough for Gregory to call after over a week of silence. Has he remembered something else of mine he wishes to sell? Does he need my signature on some document? Or has someone at Reynolds Global mentioned the emergency board meeting scheduled for next Friday? Whatever his reason, I remind myself to maintain the facade, to appear more frail than I am, more confused than I feel, more resigned than I've ever been in my life. The greatest advantage in any confrontation is being underestimated by your opponent. And in this case, my opponents are my own children, a fact that brings me no joy, but a tactical edge I won't hesitate to use. Victor picks up the phone, his voice deliberately weaker than his normal tone. Gregory? How nice of you. To call? Yes, I'm settling in just fine. The staff is very attentive. No complaints at all. As I play the role of the compliant, declining father, I'm already calculating my next move, and the expression on my son's face when he realizes exactly who he's been underestimating. Close-up on Victor's eyes, showing sharp intelligence and determination beneath the meek exterior he's projecting through his voice. Scene opens with Victor at Dr. Abernathy's office the following day. The doctor is reviewing test results on her computer screen. Your recovery continues to exceed expectations. Victor, Dr. Abernathy says, turning the screen so I can see the results. Blood pressure normal, cholesterol well controlled, and the carotid ultrasound shows no new concerns. Neurologically, you've regained almost all function. The slight weakness on your left side should continue to improve with physical therapy. study the charts and numbers dispassionately. So, there's no medical reason I can't live independently. Dr. Abernathy gives me a measured look over her glasses. None whatsoever. With minimal support, perhaps someone to help with heavier household tasks, you could manage perfectly well in your own home. This is exactly what I expected, but hearing it confirmed provides a particular satisfaction. I'd like that assessment in writing if you don't mind. She raises an eyebrow but doesn't ask why. Dr. Abernathy and I have known each other for 15 years. She understands discretion. I'll have my assistant prepare a full report. Will you be challenging your children's decision about Pinewood Acres? Eventually, I reply, not elaborating further. For now, I have other priorities. Transition to Victor returning to Pinewood Acres, walking with his driver, Samuel. Samuel has worked for me for over a decade, one of the few staff members who remained loyal after my children began consolidating control over my household. They believe he simply drives me to medical appointments. They don't know he also delivers sensitive documents, maintains my private office in a downtown building they've never visited, and serves as my eyes and ears when needed. Gregory called the main house yesterday, Samuel informs me as we approach. Pinewood Acres. He and Ms. Melissa were discussing renovations to the library, converting it into some kind of home theater room. The contractors are scheduled to start next week. My library, the room where Eleanor and I spent countless evenings, where we taught the children to read, where 4 decades of memories reside in leather-bound volumes and carefully preserved photographs. Now to be gutted for a media room, they could easily build in any of the home's other spacious areas. A familiar anger rises, but I contain it. This isn't about a room. It's about erasing me while I'm still alive, about claiming what isn't yet theirs to claim. Did they mention what they plan to do with the books? I ask, my voice deliberately neutral. Samuel hesitates. They discussed donations, sir. Ms. Melissa said something about the books cluttering up the aesthetic they're going for. Of course. My carefully curated collection of first editions, signed volumes, and rare texts, many worth significant sums, reduced to a clutter interfering with their interior design vision. Contact Morris at the auction house, I instruct Samuel. Have him prepare to receive the entire collection for safekeeping. He'll know what to do. Morris Henderson has handled my art and book acquisitions for 30 years. He'll ensure nothing of value is thoughtlessly discarded or donated without proper assessment. Victor and Samuel enter Pinewood Acres. Also, Samuel, please inform Ms. Liu that I'll need to move our timeline forward. The library situation changes things. Samuel nods discreetly as we approach the reception desk. Yes, sir. I'll handle it immediately. Later that evening, Victor in his room at Pinewood speaking with Sophia Liu via video call. They're dismantling. My library next week, I tell Sophia, keeping my voice low despite the privacy of my room. Apparently, my books don't match their aesthetic. Sophia's expression hardens. She's been my attorney for 20 years and has watched my children's gradual shift from appreciation to entitlement with increasing concern. We can file an injunction, she offers. The house hasn't been officially transferred to them yet. I shake my head. No legal action, not yet. That would tip our hand prematurely. Then what's our accelerated timeline? Move the board meeting up to Monday instead of Friday. 4 days from now. Can you make the arrangements? Sophia taps notes into her tablet. It'll require some maneuvering, but yes. Warren can cite an urgent regulatory matter that requires immediate board attention. All director-level employees will be required to attend in person. Perfect. And has the private investigator completed his work? She nods, her expression grim. The report arrived this morning. It's worse than we anticipated, Victor. Sophia shares her screen showing financial records for the past 6 months while managing my finances for my protection, Gregory. And Vanessa have been systematically moving assets from my personal accounts into joint accounts trust funds with them as beneficiaries, and various investment vehicles they control. They've sold several of my properties, liquidated investments I've held for decades, and redirected the proceeds away from my access. The most concerning transaction, Sophia highlights a particular document, is this one from 3 weeks ago. They transferred $4 million from your main investment account into a new LLC they formed in February. I study the transaction details. Eagle Vista Properties LLC, I'm not familiar with it. It's a real estate development company, Sophia explains. They've purchased land outside Portland for a luxury condominium project. According to the business plan I found, they're positioning it as their independent venture, using your money to establish themselves as successful developers separate from Reynolds Global. Victor's expression doesn't change, but his eyes harden. So not only are they draining my accounts, they're using my funds to create the illusion of their own business acumen. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so infuriating. Do they really believe I wouldn't notice $4 million missing from my accounts? They likely assumed you either wouldn't check or wouldn't understand the financial statements if you did, Sophia says bluntly. The paperwork they had you sign after your stroke included broad powers of attorney. They've been very careful to maintain the appearance of propriety, keeping meticulous records of every transaction on your behalf. I think of the concerned expressions they wore when suggesting I needed help with my finances, the patronizing way they simplified explanations as if I couldn't grasp basic financial concepts, the stack of documents they urged me to sign, so they could take care of everything. What about Pinewood Acres? I ask. How are they funding this place? Sophia flips to another document. They've arranged to sell your summer house in Maine. The proceeds will cover approximately 3 years of Pinewood's fees. The lakeside cottage where we spent every August as a family, where Eleanor taught the children to swim and sail, where I'd hoped to eventually retire. Have they found a buyer? I ask, my voice tight. Not yet. They've listed it significantly, below market value for a quick sale. At least there's that small mercy. We still have time to block the sale, to preserve that particular piece of family history. Victor stands, pacing the small room. So let me understand the full picture, I say, organizing the facts in my mind. While I've been in Pinewood for just over a week, they've scheduled renovations to remove my library, continued selling my properties, used my money to fund their own business venture, and are planning to liquidate the main cottage to pay for my institutional care, all while holding positions at Reynolds Global that I ultimately control. That's an accurate summary, Sophia confirms, her disapproval evident. I stop pacing, a cold clarity settling over me. What about Warren? Has he noticed anything unusual from either of them at the company? Sophia hesitates. He mentioned in his last report that Gregory has been pushing for a larger marketing budget, specifically requesting control over funds previously allocated to R&D. And Vanessa recently suggested Reynolds Global should consider investing in outside ventures, specifically mentioning real estate development as a potential growth area. The pieces click into place. They're positioning themselves to channel company resources into their private venture, to use Reynolds Global as yet another personal piggy bank. Did Warren approve either request? I asked sharply. No. He cited policy requirements for board approval on such significant reallocations. That's partly why they've been frustrated with him recently. At least Warren maintains his integrity. It's why I selected him for the CEO position. His unwavering commitment to proper corporate governance, regardless of pressure from within or without. Victor sits back down, his decision made. Monday's board meeting needs to accomplish several things, I tell Sophia, my voice now firm with resolve. First, a complete review of all director-level spending and budget requests for the past year. Second, a formal audit of any potential conflicts of interest among senior staff. And third, the introduction of the company's majority shareholder to the full board. Sophia nods, making notes. And after the meeting, After the meeting, we'll address my personal finances and property. One battle at a time, Sophia. As our call ends, my phone alerts me to an incoming text. It's from Gregory. Dad. Contractor needs access to the library next week. Do you have any specific books you want us to set aside before work begins? Otherwise, we'll handle donating everything. Hope you're settling in at Pinewood. We'll try to visit soon when things calm down at work. The casual presumption infuriates me. The assumption that my library, my books, my memories are simply objects, to be disposed of at their convenience. The empty promise of a visit when things calm down, when they haven't bothered to check on me for over a week. I could respond with anger. I could threaten legal action. I could remind him that the house isn't legally his to renovate yet. Instead, I type a reply that will further lull him into complacency. No need to set anything aside. I understand you need to make the house your own. Settling in fine here. No. Rush to visit. I know how busy work keeps you. Let him believe I've accepted my fate. Let him think I'm the compliant, declining father they want me to be. Let him and Vanessa continue operating under the delusion that they've successfully sidelined me. Monday's board meeting is now just 4 days away. Victor looks out his window. At the manicured grounds of Pinewood Acres, his reflection in the glass showing a man who is anything but defeated. 4 days until my children discover exactly who they've been underestimating. 4 days until they learn the true meaning of the Reynolds family motto that I chose decades ago. Fortune favors the prepared, and I have never been more prepared in my life. Close-up on Victor's determined expression as dusk falls, Dad on Father's. Day cards grow into a man who deposits me in a facility without a backward glance? Beatrice considers this thoughtfully. Perhaps the more important question is, what will you do after Monday? Assuming everything goes as planned, you reclaim your company, your finances, your independence. What then? Will you sever ties completely? Pursue legal action against them? Or attempt some form of reconciliation? It's the question I've been avoiding. The tactical aspects of my plan are clear, the emotional aftermath much less so. I don't know, I admit. Part of me wants to cut them off entirely, let them experience life without the safety net they've taken for granted. Another part remembers them as children and wonders if there's something salvageable beneath the entitlement and greed. Our conversation is interrupted by a staff member approaching our table. Mr. Reynolds, you have visitors in the main lobby. I check my watch. 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday. No one has visited me since I arrived at Pinewood, and I've scheduled no meetings for today. Who is it? I ask, instantly alert. Your son and daughter-in-law, sir. They said they were in the neighborhood and thought they'd stop by. Gregory and Melissa. After nearly 10 days of silence, they suddenly appear unannounced. The timing can't be coincidence, not with the board meeting looming on Monday. I exchange a glance with Beatrice, who reads my suspicion. Shall I make myself scarce? She offers. Not at all, I reply. I'd appreciate your continued company if you don't mind. An objective observer might be valuable. Victor and Beatrice move to the main lobby, where Gregory and Melissa wait. Gregory looks up as I enter, his practiced smile faltering slightly at the sight of Beatrice beside me. Melissa's expression is more controlled, her society manners kicking in as she steps forward to air-kiss my cheek. Dad, you're looking well, Gregory says, his tone suggesting surprise. How are you settling in? As well as can be expected, I reply neutrally. This is my friend, Beatrice Harrington. Beatrice, my son Gregory, and his wife Melissa. Gregory's eyes widen slightly at the name. Harrington? As in Harrington Financial? Beatrice smiles coolly. My late husband was the founder, yes. I can almost see the calculations running behind Gregory's eyes, the potential networking opportunity, the unexpected connection in what he'd likely dismissed as a warehouse for the elderly. Would you like to sit down? I gesture to a seating area, deliberately taking control of the interaction. "What brings you by so unexpectedly?" They exchange a quick glance before Melissa speaks. "We were just thinking about you, wondering how you were adjusting. And of course, we wanted to update you on the house renovations. The contractors start Monday on the library conversion." "So I heard," I reply, keeping my tone conversational. "Gregory mentioned it in his text. Quite a project." Gregory nods enthusiastically. "It's going to be amazing, Dad. State-of-the-art projection system, surround sound, custom seating. We'll have you over for movie night once it's completed." The casual presumption that I'd want to visit the gutted remains of my library to watch films in a room that once held Eleanor's and my most treasured possessions almost breaks my composure. Almost. That sounds nice, I lie, watching their expressions carefully. Any other updates I should know about? Another swift glance between them. "Well," Gregory begins, his tone too casual, "there's been an unexpected development at work. Warren has called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Apparently, there's some regulatory issue that needs immediate attention. And there it is, the real reason for their sudden appearance. They've learned about the board meeting and are fishing for information. Is that unusual?" I ask, feigning mild interest. Melissa answers, her marketing background evident in her careful framing. "It's just odd timing. Gregory and I were planning to take a long weekend, but now he has to be back for this meeting. Warren was very insistent that all director-level employees attend in person." "Sounds important," I observe neutrally. "The thing is, Dad," Gregory leans forward, his expression earnest. "Warren mentioned that the company's majority shareholder might be making an appearance. I didn't realize Reynolds Global had a majority shareholder outside the family and the board. Do you know anything about that?" Victor feels a moment of clarity. This is the breaking point, in that instant. As my son attempts to manipulate information from me about a company I built and still control, while sitting in a facility where he's abandoned me, something crystallizes in my mind. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a series of thoughtless actions. This is a deliberate pattern of deception and self-interest, carried out by adults fully aware of their choices. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I feel absolute clarity about my children. The pain is sharp, but cleansing. I'm afraid I'm not privy to the inner workings of Reynolds Global anymore, I say, the lie coming easily. As you've both reminded me several times, I'm retired now. The company has moved beyond my outdated management style. Gregory looks relieved, apparently believing I know nothing of significance. "Of course, Dad. I didn't mean to bore you with business talk. We just want you to know we're looking out for the family interests." The family interests. As if those could be separated from my interests. As if I weren't still family. "I'm sure you're doing what you think is best," I reply, rising from my seat. "Now, I hope you'll excuse me. I have a therapy session scheduled for tomorrow morning, and I need my rest." They seem startled by the abrupt dismissal, having clearly planned a longer information-gathering mission. "But we just got here," Melissa protests. "We thought we might have dinner with you, catch up properly." "Another time, perhaps," I say firmly. The staff is quite strict about residents maintaining their routines, health and wellness protocols, you understand. It's complete fiction, but they don't know that. They've spent so little time here they have no idea how Pinewood actually operates. "Well, if you're sure," Gregory says, standing reluctantly. "We'll visit again soon after the renovations are further along. Maybe bring some photos to show you the progress." "That would be nice," I lie again, walking them toward the exit. "Drive safely." As they leave, I notice Melissa whispering something to Gregory, her expression concerned. They've come away with less information than they hoped for, and it clearly worries them. Victor turns to Beatrice as the door closes behind them. "That," Beatrice says quietly, "was the most masterful display of strategic restraint I've witnessed in quite some time." They're nervous about Monday, I observe. They know something significant is happening but can't identify the threat. They'll know soon enough, Beatrice replies with grim satisfaction. What will you do now? I check my watch. Decision made. Contact my attorney and my driver. I need to make some adjustments to Monday's plan. This visit confirms they're more aware than I anticipated, which means we need to be even more prepared. As I reach for my phone, I feel something I haven't experienced in months, the familiar rush of adrenaline that comes with high-stakes business maneuvers, the clarity of purpose that defined my professional life for decades. For 6 months, I've been retreating, emotionally, physically, strategically. But that ends now. The breaking point has been reached, and with it comes liberation from uncertainty. My children have made their choices. Now they'll live with the consequences. Victor makes a call, his voice strong and decisive. Sophia? It's Victor. Our friends just paid me an unexpected visit. Yes, fishing for information about Monday. I think it's time to implement our contingency plan, the full version. As I outline the enhanced strategy, I feel something like peace settling over me. Not happiness. There can be no happiness in this situation, but the calm certainty that comes from finally seeing things as they truly are. Monday can't come soon enough. Close up on Victor's face, no longer conflicted, but resolved. Scene opens. Early Monday morning. Victor is in his room at Pinewood Acres, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, reviewing documents with Sophia Liu. The car will arrive at 8:15, Sophia confirms, checking her watch. That gives us plenty of time to reach the corporate headquarters before the 9:30 meeting. Warren has arranged for us to enter through the executive garage to maintain the element of surprise. I nod, adjusting my tie. The suit feels good. Reminder of who I am beyond these institutional walls. And the documentation? All prepared. She hands me a leather portfolio. The ownership structure, voting rights, financial records from the holding companies, and evidence of your children's recent activities regarding your personal assets. Everything you might need, depending on how the confrontation unfolds. I review the materials one last time. And legally, we're on solid ground? Absolutely, Sophia assures me. You never relinquished control of Reynolds Global despite the complex structure. And regarding your personal finances, they've overstepped their authority under the power of attorney by converting assets for their personal use without your informed consent. We have multiple grounds for action if needed. Soft knock interrupts us. Samuel, my driver, stands at the door. The car is ready, sir. I've brought the wheelchair as discussed. The wheelchair? A tactical decision. Gregory and Melissa last saw me standing and walking independently. If word reaches them before the meeting that I've left Pinewood, I want reports to describe a frail man being wheeled to a car, not someone striding purposefully toward confrontation. Let's proceed, I tell them, gathering my resolve. At the reception desk, Victor is seated in the wheelchair with a blanket across his lap, appearing more vulnerable than he actually is. Mr. Reynolds is checking out for the day, Sophia informs the receptionist. He has medical appointments followed by family business. Will return this evening. The receptionist looks confused. I don't see any scheduled outings on the calendar. Let me check with the administrator. That won't be necessary, Sophia interrupts smoothly, placing a document on the counter. Mr. Reynolds is not under any legal or medical restriction. As his attorney, I've provided notification of his outing. The facility has no authority to prevent a competent resident from leaving temporarily. Her tone brooks no argument, and the receptionist reluctantly processes the paperwork. I remain silent throughout the exchange, playing the role of the compliant elderly man while Sophia handles the details. As we exit the building, I spot Beatrice watching from a side window. She gives me a discreet thumbs up, our prearranged signal that she'll monitor any communication from my children to the facility during my absence. In the car, Victor immediately sits upright, discarding the blanket and the appearance of frailty. Any updates from Warren this morning? I ask as Samuel navigates toward downtown. Sophia checks her phone. Nothing unexpected. The meeting is set with all required attendees confirmed. Gregory arrived early. He's apparently been trying to get information from Warren's assistant about the agenda and the mysterious majority shareholder. I can picture the scene. Gregory using his charm and family connection to extract information, growing increasingly frustrated when his usual tactics fail. Warren's assistant has worked with me for years. Her loyalty is absolute. And Vanessa? Not yet arrived according to security logs. But she'll be there. Warren made it clear that absence would have serious consequences. I nod, gazing out at the familiar cityscape. Reynolds Global's headquarters dominates the skyline, 38 stories of steel and glass that house the company Eleanor and I built from nothing. I haven't set foot in the building for 6 months, since my stroke provided Gregory and Vanessa the pretext to suggest I focus on recovery rather than business matters. Today, I return not as the advisory founder they've sidelined, but as the controlling owner they never knew existed. The car enters the underground executive garage, stopping at a private elevator. Warren Phillips is waiting, his normally composed expression showing a hint of anticipation. He steps forward as Samuel opens my door. "Victor," he greets me with a firm handshake. "Everything is prepared as you requested." "Thank you, Warren. Any last-minute developments I should know about?" He checks his watch. Gregory tried to access the shareholder registry this morning, supposedly for routine marketing outreach. When denied, he became rather insistent, and both he and Vanessa have separately approached board members, fishing, for information about today's agenda. "They're nervous," I observe. "With good reason," Warren replies, his tone professional, but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. He's witnessed my children's gradual dismissal of my role, their assumption of privileges without corresponding responsibilities. While too professional to show it openly, I suspect he's looking forward to today's reckoning. As we ride the executive elevator to the boardroom level, I feel a complex mixture of emotions. Anticipation, certainly. Righteous anger over my children's betrayal. But also a deep sadness that matters have come to this, that I must reclaim my company and my dignity through this public confrontation. Outside the boardroom doors, Victor pauses. "I'll enter after the meeting begins," I tell Warren. And Sophia, "I want to observe the initial dynamics before revealing myself." They nod in understanding. Warren checks his watch again. "I should go in now. The board members are arriving, and I need to convene the meeting on schedule." He gives me a respectful nod. "Good luck, Victor. Though I suspect you won't need it." After Warren enters the boardroom, Sophia turns to me. "Are you absolutely certain about this approach? We could still handle this more privately, minimize the public nature of the confrontation." I appreciate her concern, but my mind is made up. Some lessons require witnesses to be truly effective. Gregory and Vanessa have been trading on appearances for too long, maintaining a public image while privately undermining me. It's appropriate that the correction occurs in the same forum where they've built their professional identities. Sophia nods, understanding my reasoning. We move to the observation room adjacent to the boardroom, where we can watch and listen through one-way glass until the moment is right. In the observation room, Victor watches as the board meeting begins. The boardroom fills quickly. Board members in serious conversation, executives checking phones and tablets, administrative staff arranging materials. Gregory sits near the head of the table, attempting to appear casually confident while repeatedly checking the door. Vanessa arrives last, taking a seat opposite her brother, her expression tightly controlled. Warren calls the meeting to order precisely at 9:30. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for accommodating this emergency session." Before we address the regulatory matter described in your briefing materials, we have a special presentation from the company's majority shareholder. A ripple of interest moves through the room. Board members sit straighter. Executives exchange glances. Gregory leans toward Warren. I wasn't aware Reynolds Global had a majority shareholder outside the established board structure, he says, his tone deliberately casual but with an edge of tension. Warren's expression remains neutral. The ownership structure of Reynolds Global has always been more complex than the simplified version presented in public documents, Gregory. As you and other members of the leadership team are about to learn, Vanessa interjects, her finance background evident in her precise question. Complex. How exactly? The annual reports indicate distributed ownership with no controlling interest above 15%. Those reports reflect the visible ownership structure, Warren explains. They don't include the holdings managed through various trusts and holding companies that ultimately report to a single beneficial owner. The board chairman, Jonathan Mercer, frowns. Warren, are you saying there has been a lack of transparency in our corporate structure? That seems highly irregular. Not at all, Jonathan, Warren replies calmly. The full ownership structure has always been properly documented and legally sound. It's simply that certain aspects were maintained as confidential for strategic purposes. The majority shareholder has decided it's time to make their position known to the full board and executive team. Gregory's expression darkens. And who exactly is this mysterious majority owner? Someone looking to make a hostile move against family interests? The irony of his concern for family interests is almost painful to witness. Warren looks directly at Gregory, then Vanessa. I think it's best if they explain themselves. They should be joining us momentarily. My cue. I stand, straightening my jacket and meeting Sophia's supportive gaze. Ready? She asks quietly. I've been ready since they left me at Pinewood on my birthday, I reply, moving toward the connecting door. As I enter the boardroom, the reaction is immediate and electric. Board members and executives who know me well register shock and confusion. Those who don't recognize me simply see an elderly man in an expensive suit, commanding attention through presence alone. Gregory and Vanessa's reactions are what I focus on. The blood draining from my son's face, the rigid stillness that overtakes my daughter as recognition dawns. Their expressions shift rapidly through disbelief, confusion, and the beginning edges of fear. Good morning, I say, my voice strong and clear in the sudden silence. For those who don't know me, I'm Victor Reynolds, founder of Reynolds Global, and, as Warren has indicated, the company's majority shareholder. I move to the head of the table, where Warren has vacated the chair. Sophia takes a position just behind me, placing the portfolio of documents within easy reach. Dad, Gregory begins, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. What is this? You're supposed to be at Pinewood. How did you even get here? I drove him, Sophia states flatly. As Mr. Reynolds' attorney, I'm here to assist with today's proceedings. Vanessa recovers more quickly than her brother, her analytical mind already calculating implications. This doesn't make sense. The company ownership was restructured years ago. The family shares were distributed among the board and executive team. A carefully constructed appearance, I correct her. The visible shares, yes. But the controlling interest has always remained with me, through a series of holding companies and strategic investments that weren't apparent without detailed investigation. I open the portfolio, removing the first document, a comprehensive ownership map showing how the various entities connect back to me. I slide it across to Jonathan, the board chairman. As you can see, Jonathan, everything is properly documented and entirely legal. I simply maintained privacy regarding the extent of my continued ownership. Jonathan studies the document, his experienced eyes quickly grasping the structure. This appears to be in order, he acknowledges, passing the document to the corporate counsel seated beside him. But why reveal this now, Victor? Why the secrecy in the first place? I look directly at my children as I answer. The confidential structure was initially created as a succession planning strategy, a way to evaluate potential future leadership without the pressure of direct observation. Unfortunately, recent events have necessitated a more transparent approach. Gregory attempts to regain his composure, forcing a smile. Dad, if this is about Pinewood, we should discuss that privately. This isn't the appropriate forum. On the contrary, I interrupt, my tone firm. This is precisely the appropriate forum. You and Vanessa hold your positions at Reynolds Global because of your family connection. You've used those positions to build professional credibility, while simultaneously making decisions about my personal welfare without consultation. The connection between these matters is undeniable. The room has grown uncomfortably silent, the other executives and board members now unwilling witnesses to what is clearly a family confrontation with significant corporate implications. Perhaps, Warren suggests diplomatically, we should take a brief recess to allow Mr. Reynolds and his family to address some matters privately before continuing with the formal agenda. I consider the suggestion, then nod. 15 minutes. Gregory, Vanessa. The executive conference room should provide adequate privacy. As the other attendees file out, relieved to escape the tension, my children remain seated, both visibly processing the implications of what's occurring. This is just the opening salvo, the initial confrontation that will lead to much more difficult conversations. But already I can see the shift in their perception, the dawning realization that they've catastrophically misunderstood their position and mine. Shall we? I gesture toward the door, maintaining the professional veneer despite the personal nature of what's to come. As we move toward the private conference room, Sophia steadfastly at my side, I prepare myself for their defense mechanisms, their justifications, their attempts to reframe their actions. I steel myself against the emotional manipulation that has been their default strategy for years. This is the conflict I've been avoiding since Eleanor's death. But some confrontations, however painful, are necessary for truth to emerge and for justice to finally be served. Close up on Victor's face, showing determination mixed with the inevitable pain of confronting his own children's betrayal. Scene. Opens in the executive conference room. Victor sits at the head of the table, Sophia beside him. Gregory and Vanessa sit opposite, their body language defensive. The sleek conference room with its panoramic city views had hosted countless negotiations over the decades. I'd closed billion-dollar deals here, outmaneuvered competitors, redirected the company through economic downturns and market shifts. But none of those conversations had carried the emotional weight of facing my own children across this polished mahogany table. Let me make sure I understand what's happening, Vanessa begins, her finance-trained mind seeking structure in chaos. You maintained controlling interest in Reynolds Global through a series of shell companies and trusts that even the board wasn't fully aware of. Correct, I confirm. The restructuring 5 years ago created an appearance of distributed ownership while maintaining my controlling position. Why? Gregory asks, his marketing instincts focusing on motive rather than mechanism. Why go to such lengths to hide your continued control? I study them both before answering. Initially, it was a test, a way to observe how the company would function without my visible leadership, to see who would step up, who would demonstrate the values and vision necessary to eventually take the reins. A test we apparently failed, Vanessa states flatly. The company didn't fail, I correct her. Warren has managed operations admirably. The executive team has largely maintained the standards and culture Eleanor and I established. But we failed. Gregory presses, gesturing between himself and his sister. That's what you're saying? Your performance at Reynolds Global isn't the central issue today, I reply, keeping my voice measured. Though your recent attempts to redirect company resources toward your personal ventures would eventually have triggered intervention regardless, they exchange glances, surprised that I know about Eagle Vista Properties and their attempts to access corporate funds. What concerns me more immediately, I continue, is your handling of my personal affairs. Specifically, Your decisions regarding my home, my property, and my placement at Pinewood Acres, all without meaningful consultation, all while using the power of attorney I granted for medical emergencies in ways it was never intended. Gregory shifts uncomfortably. Dad, we were trying to help. After your stroke. My stroke was 6 months ago, I interrupt. I've been undergoing therapy and recovery that you've barely bothered to monitor. Dr. Abernathy cleared me for independent living weeks ago. Information you would have had if you'd attended any of my medical appointments. We've been busy, Vanessa offers weakly. Too busy to consult me before selling my properties? Too busy to discuss alternatives before placing me in an assisted living facility? Too busy to visit more than once in 10 days after abandoning me there? My voice remains calm, but the questions land with increasing impact. Neither can meet. My eyes now. Let's be direct, I continue. You saw my health setback as an opportunity to consolidate control over my assets. You methodically transferred funds, liquidated investments, and directed proceeds toward your own interests, including $4 million diverted to Eagle Vista Properties. Gregory's head snaps up. How did you— I've been incapacitated, not incompetent, I reply coolly. Did you really believe I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't maintain oversight of my own financial affairs? Sophia slides forward a folder containing the forensic accounting report. This documents every questionable transaction since Mr. Reynolds granted limited power of attorney following his stroke. Particularly concerning are these transfers. She indicates several highlighted entries, where personal funds were moved into accounts and entities solely controlled by the two of you. Vanessa, always quicker with financial details, scans the document and pales visibly. We can explain these, she begins, though her tone lacks conviction. I'm sure you can, I reply. People can rationalize almost anything when it serves their interests. The question is whether your explanations would satisfy regulatory authorities if this matter were pursued legally. The implied threat hangs in the air. I have no desire to see my children face legal consequences, but they need to understand the severity of their actions. Gregory attempts a different approach. Dad, we've made mistakes, clearly, but our intentions were good. We wanted to protect you, to make sure you were cared for. Maybe we overstepped in some areas. You abandoned me in a care facility on my birthday, I state bluntly. After selling my possessions, planning to gut my library, and using my money to fund your real estate venture. These aren't missteps, Gregory. They reflect fundamental character. The words land with visible impact. For the first time, I see genuine shame in their expressions, not just concern about consequences, but recognition of how their actions appear when plainly stated. A heavy silence fills the room. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city continues its bustling rhythm, oblivious to our family drama unfolding 30 floors above. What happens now? Vanessa finally asks, her usual confidence subdued. It's the question I've been wrestling with since discovering their betrayal. What does justice look like in this situation? What consequences would be appropriate and constructive rather than merely punitive? That depends partly on you, I reply. But for now, here's what will occur. First, I'm resuming full control of my personal finances, effective immediately. Sophia has prepared documentation revoking the power of attorney and establishing new protocols for my accounts and properties. They nod, having clearly expected this. Second, all sales of my properties will be halted pending review, including the main cottage. Assets already liquidated will be traced and, where appropriate, recovered, including the funds diverted to Eagle Vista Properties. Vanessa winces. That will effectively kill the project. We've made commitments, signed contracts. Perhaps you shouldn't have used misappropriated funds for those commitments, Sophia interjects coolly. I continue before they can argue further. Third, regarding Reynolds Global, I'll be returning to a more active role, though not as CEO. Warren has proven himself more than capable in that position. And what about us? Gregory asks, the question they've both been dreading. I study my children. These adults I raised, loved, provided for, yet somehow failed to instill with basic integrity. Despite everything, I find I cannot simply cast them aside. They are Eleanor's. Children, too, carrying her features, her mannerisms, pieces of her that remain in this world. That, I say slowly, will require significant rehabilitation, both personal and professional. Your continued employment at Reynolds Global will depend on several conditions. I outline my terms. They will step down from director-level positions, returning to roles more aligned with their demonstrated capabilities and ethics. They will undergo executive coaching focused on corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility. Most importantly, they will engage in regular accountability sessions with me, Warren, and the Ethics Committee. This isn't punishment, I clarify, seeing their stricken expressions. It's an opportunity to rebuild what you've damaged. Your professional credibility, my trust, and your own integrity. Whether you choose to accept these terms is entirely up to you. Gregory looks bewildered, clearly having expected either a complete severing of ties or an eventual softening with minimal consequences. And if we don't agree? Then you'll be free to pursue opportunities elsewhere without the Reynolds name or connections to ease your way. You're both adults. I won't force you to accept accountability if you're unwilling. The stark choice settles over them. I can almost see the calculations behind their eyes, weighing the humiliation of demotion against the challenge of starting over without family advantages. I need time to think, Vanessa says finally. As do I, Gregory adds. Take the rest of the day, I tell them. I expect your decision by tomorrow morning. Now, if you'll excuse us, Sophia and I need to rejoin the board meeting to address the corporate implications of today's revelations. As they exit, subdued, shaken, perhaps beginning to recognize the magnitude of what they've done, I feel an unexpected lightness. Not happiness, certainly. The situation remains painful beyond measure. But there's liberation in finally confronting truth, in reclaiming my agency after months of gradual erasure. Later that afternoon, Victor sits alone in his old office, which has been maintained as a founder's suite, but rarely used. The familiar space brings memories flooding back. Late nights working alongside Eleanor, strategic decisions that shaped the company's growth, celebrations of key milestones. The office remains largely as I left it, a museum piece preserved. Out of respect for the founder's legacy. Warren knocks lightly on the open door. The board has adjourned for the day. They've approved the transition plan and expressed full support for your resumed involvement. Thank you, Warren. You handled everything admirably. He enters, closing the door for privacy. If I may speak? Frankly, I've been concerned about your children's actions for some time, both within the company and regarding your personal situation. I should have said something sooner. I shake my head. You were placed in an impossible position, and you maintained your integrity throughout, which is why you retain my complete confidence as CEO. Warren nods, accepting both the absolution and the affirmation. What will you do now? About Pinewood Acres, I mean. I'm not returning there except to collect my belongings and say proper goodbyes to the people I've met. I look out at the city skyline, feeling a renewed sense of possibility. It's time to reclaim my life on my own terms. After Warren leaves, I sit quietly, reflecting on the day's events and the transformation occurring within me. For months, I've been retreating, physically, emotionally, strategically, allowing myself to be diminished by those I raised and trusted. That version of Victor Reynolds ends today. Sophia returns with confirmation that the necessary legal documents have been filed to restore my financial autonomy. As she reviews next steps, I find myself thinking of Beatrice and the other residents at Pinewood. Intelligent, capable people marginalized by age and circumstance. Sophia, I interrupt her methodical review. I'd like to explore establishing a foundation focused on elder advocacy and autonomy, something that provides legal support, financial guidance, and practical resources for older adults navigating complex family dynamics and institutional systems. She looks up from her notes, surprised but intrigued. That's not what I expected you to say, but it's an excellent idea with significant potential impact. Begin researching options, I tell her. I'll want to move quickly once the immediate situation with Gregory and Vanessa is resolved. As Sophia leaves to make arrangements for my permanent departure from Pinewood, I open my laptop and begin drafting a concept document for what will become the Reynolds Autonomy Foundation. The vision forms rapidly, combining legal advocacy, financial education, and practical support services designed to ensure no one faces institutional placement or financial exploitation without informed consent and robust protection. This unexpected chapter of my life, painful as it has been, has revealed a purpose I might never have discovered otherwise. There's something fitting about transforming personal betrayal into systemic change that might protect others from similar experiences. Samuel arrives to drive me back to Pinewood for what will be my final night there. Tomorrow, regardless of Gregory and Vanessa's decision, I'll be returning to my own home, not the large family house they've begun renovating without permission, but the downtown penthouse I maintained as a personal retreat even after Eleanor's death. As the city lights begin to shimmer in the early evening, I feel not just the restoration of what was taken, but the emergence of something new, a clearer perspective, a stronger sense of purpose, a commitment to creating meaning from injustice. This, I realize, is the truest form of reclamation. Not just recovering what was lost, but discovering who I am beyond the roles of founder, father, and figurehead. At 76, I'm experiencing a personal transformation more profound than any I've known since founding the company decades ago. They left me in a nursing home on my birthday. But in doing so, they inadvertently set me on a path to become more authentically myself than I've been in years. Close up on Victor's expression, showing renewed purpose and the beginning of healing, scene opens at Pinewood Acres the following. Morning. Victor is packing his belongings while speaking with Beatrice. So you're really leaving today, Beatrice observes, watching as I carefully place my journals and personal items into a leather suitcase. I must say, I'll miss our conversations, Victor. Not many here can discuss hostile takeovers over breakfast. I smile, appreciating her wry humor. I'll miss you too, Beatrice. But this doesn't have to be goodbye. I hope you'll accept invitations to continue our discussions in more pleasant surroundings. I'd like that, she replies, then hesitates. Have you heard from your children this morning? Their deadline is approaching, isn't it? Not yet. I check my watch, 9:15 a.m. They have until noon to decide whether they'll accept the terms I outlined or pursue careers elsewhere. Either way, I'm proceeding with reclaiming my home and finances. Beatrice studies me thoughtfully. You've changed since you arrived here, you know. That first day, beneath the dignity and composure, I could see the shock, the betrayal. Now there's something different, a clarity that wasn't there before. Her observation strikes me as remarkably perceptive. I suppose crisis reveals character, both in those who create it and those who endure it. And sometimes, she adds with a knowing look, it creates something entirely new. Our conversation is interrupted by a staff member appearing at the door. Mr. Reynolds, you have visitors at reception, your son and daughter. I exchange glances with Beatrice, surprised by their unexpected appearance. Please tell them I'll be down shortly. After the staff member leaves, Beatrice rises. Would you like me to make myself scarce, or would an objective witness be helpful again? I think this is a conversation I need to have alone, I reply, closing my suitcase. But thank you for the offer, and for your friendship these past 2 weeks. She squeezes my hand briefly. Whatever happens down there, remember, some family ties are worth preserving, while others are simply ropes that hold us underwater. Trust your instincts about which is which. In the private visitor lounge, Gregory and Vanessa wait nervously. They stand as I enter, both dressed formally as if attending a business meeting rather than visiting their father. I notice immediately that Gregory has brought a thick folder, and Vanessa clutches her tablet. Props for whatever presentation they've prepared. "Dad?" Gregory begins, his tone carefully calibrated. "We appreciate you seeing us before your deadline. We've spent the night discussing your terms and considering our response." I take a seat across from them, observing their body language. They've clearly rehearsed this conversation, probably debating strategies until dawn. "And what have you decided?" They exchange glances before Vanessa speaks. "Before we give our answer, we'd like to present an alternative proposal for your consideration." Of course, always negotiating, always seeking leverage. "Go ahead." Gregory opens his folder, removing several documents. "We've developed a comprehensive family reconciliation plan that addresses your concerns while preserving our professional dignity and family relationships." What follows is a polished presentation that would impress clients, but strikes me as fundamentally misguided in this context. They outline a phased transition of authority that would gradually return control of my assets while maintaining their executive positions. They propose collaborative oversight of my financial decisions rather than complete autonomy. They suggest a family council to address grievances rather than direct accountability. It's all packaging, corporate language applied to a deeply personal betrayal, marketing techniques used to avoid genuine consequences. Not once do they directly acknowledge the harm they've caused or accept full responsibility for their actions. As they finish their presentation, looking expectantly for my response, I realize we've reached the true turning point in our relationship. Not yesterday's confrontation in the boardroom, but this moment, when they reveal their inability to step outside the transactional mindset that has corrupted our family bonds. "I appreciate the effort you've put into this presentation," I begin carefully. "It's thorough and well-structured, as I would expect from both of you." They appear cautiously optimistic at this opening. "However," I continue, "what troubles me deeply is what's missing. There's no genuine acknowledgement of the pain you've caused, no true acceptance of responsibility beyond corporate speak about communication failures and misaligned expectations. You're still approaching this as a negotiation rather than a fundamental breach of trust that requires healing." Their expressions fall, Gregory's more visibly than Vanessa's. "Dad, that's not fair," Gregory protests. "We spent all night working on this." "And that's precisely the problem," I interrupt gently. "You spent the night crafting a strategy rather than reflecting on your actions. You're still treating this as a business problem to be managed, rather than a family wound that needs honest acknowledgement and genuine remorse." Vanessa's analytical mind catches up faster. "You're saying the presentation itself is evidence that we don't understand what's really at stake." "Yes," I confirm, relieved that at least one of them sees it. "This isn't about negotiating terms or preserving positions. It's about recognizing that some actions fundamentally change relationships. What you did, placing me in Pinewood without proper consultation, selling my possessions, planning to dismantle my library, using my funds for your ventures, these weren't business decisions gone wrong. They were personal betrayals that reveal how you view me and our relationship." A heavy silence fills the room as my words sink in. For perhaps the first time, I see genuine discomfort in their expressions. Not just concern about consequences, but a glimmer of true recognition about the nature of their actions. "What do you want from us, Dad?" Gregory finally asks, his voice stripped of its usual polish. "Just tell us plainly." The directness of his question, so unlike the calculated approach they've taken until now, feels like the first authentic moment we've shared in years. I lean forward, meeting his gaze. I want you to understand that trust, once broken, can't be restored through clever proposals or negotiated terms. It can only be rebuilt slowly through consistent actions that demonstrate genuine change. I stand, moving to the window to gather my thoughts before turning back to face them. I'm leaving Pinewood today. I'm reclaiming control of my finances and properties. These aren't negotiable points. As for your positions at Reynolds Global, my terms remain as stated yesterday. You step down from director-level roles, engage in intensive ethics training and executive coaching, and participate in regular accountability sessions. In time, you may earn opportunities to advance again, but that will depend entirely on demonstrating fundamental changes in your approach and values. They absorb this in silence, the corporate veneer finally cracking to reveal the uncertain adults beneath. And if we accept these terms, Vanessa asks quietly, what about our relationship with you, outside of work? It's the question I've been wrestling with since discovering their betrayal. How do I balance accountability with the undeniable fact that they are my children, Eleanor's children, the family I have left in this world? That, I say carefully, will also need to be rebuilt. I won't pretend these past months haven't damaged my trust in you both profoundly. But I'm willing to begin that process if you are, with honesty, without strategic positioning, with genuine effort to understand the impact of your actions. Something shifts in the room's atmosphere, a tension releasing, a pretense abandoned. Gregory sets aside his folder of proposals. Vanessa puts down her tablet. For the first time since entering, they seem present as people rather than executives managing a crisis. I didn't want to put you in Pinewood, Gregory admits suddenly, his voice rough with unexpected emotion. It was Melissa who pushed for it, said it would be better for everyone. I knew you wouldn't want it, but I convinced myself it was the right thing, that we were helping you. And I should have questioned the financial restructuring more carefully, Vanessa adds, genuinely reflective. Now, I saw discrepancies, transactions that didn't align with standard protocols for power of attorney management, but it was easier to go along, to focus on the benefits to our ventures rather than the ethical implications. These aren't complete admissions, but they're starts, cracks in the carefully constructed justifications they've maintained. For the first time, I see glimmers of the children I raised, not just the adults they've become. This is where healing begins, I tell them, quietly. Not with presentations and proposals, but with truth, however uncomfortable it might be. Gregory looks up, his expression more vulnerable than I've seen in years. Can we still be a family after all this? The question cuts straight to the heart of what's at stake. Not corporate positions or financial control, but the fundamental bonds that define us. We are still a family, I reply carefully. But what that means going forward, the nature of our relationship, the boundaries and expectations, that's what we need to redefine. Together, with honesty and accountability on all sides. As we continue talking, more authentically than we have in years, I sense we've crossed an invisible threshold. The carefully constructed facades have begun to crumble, allowing glimpses of genuine connection to emerge from beneath the rubble of broken trust. By the end of our conversation, Gregory and Vanessa have agreed to my terms regarding Reynolds Global. More importantly, they've committed to family therapy sessions, a suggestion that would have been unthinkable yesterday, but now feels like a necessary path forward. When Samuel arrives to transport me and my belongings to the downtown apartment, my children help carry my suitcases to the car, a small gesture, but symbolically significant. As we prepare to part ways, I make one final request. I'd like to visit the house tomorrow, to see the library before any renovations begin. There are books and mementos I'd like to personally select for preservation. They exchange glances, communicating silently as siblings often do. Actually, Gregory says hesitantly, We've put the renovation on hold. After yesterday, it didn't seem right to proceed without proper discussion. It's a small concession, but meaningful. Perhaps the first tangible evidence that something has shifted in their understanding of boundaries and respect. As I bid them goodbye, promising to meet for dinner later in the week to continue our conversation, Beatrice watches from the Pinewood entrance. She gives me a subtle nod of approval, recognizing the delicate balance I'm attempting to strike between accountability and reconciliation. Family ties. I hear her words in my mind as Samuel drives away from Pinewood for the last time. Some worth preserving, others simply ropes that hold us underwater. The question of which category my relationship with Gregory and Vanessa falls into remains unanswered. But for the first time in months, I feel cautiously optimistic that we might find our way to something authentic, not a return to what was before, but perhaps something more honest, more balanced, more mutually respectful than what we've had for years. This morning began with uncertainty and defensiveness. It ends with the first fragile tendrils of potential reconciliation. A turning point not just in our family drama, but in my own understanding of what it means to be both vulnerable and powerful, hurt and healing, a father and a separate individual, with rights and dignity of his own. As we drive toward my downtown apartment, I feel a sense of possibility that transcends the specific circumstances of my family situation. There's liberation in setting clear boundaries, in refusing to accept disrespect regardless of its source, in standing firmly for one's own worth, even when those boundaries must be established with the people we love most. This turning point, painful as it has been, offers a foundation for whatever comes next. In my family relationships, in my renewed engagement with Reynolds Global, and most importantly, in my understanding of who Victor Reynolds truly is beyond the roles and responsibilities that have defined me for decades. Close up on Victor's expression as he looks out the car window, showing both the lingering pain of betrayal and the cautious hope of potential healing. Scene opens 1 month later. Victor is in his downtown penthouse apartment, preparing for a meeting. The space is elegant and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 1 month since I walked out of Pinewood Acres. 1 month of reclaiming my life, my autonomy, my dignity. The journey hasn't been linear. Progress rarely is. But standing here in my own space, preparing to chair the first official meeting of the Reynolds Autonomy Foundation, I feel a satisfaction that transcends the lingering hurt of betrayal. My phone chimes with a text from Beatrice. On my way up, brought those legal articles we discussed. Beatrice has become not just a friend, but a key ally in establishing the foundation. Her experience as the wife of a prominent attorney, combined with her personal understanding of elder displacement, makes her invaluable to our mission. Since leaving Pinewood, she's taken an apartment in the same building, a decision that raised eyebrows among her family, but has given her a sense of purpose she'd been missing. The doorman announces her arrival, along with Sophia and Judge Michaels, a retired family court judge who's agreed to serve on our advisory board. As I welcome them, I'm struck by how quickly this new chapter of my life has taken shape, how what began as a personal crisis has evolved into a purposeful mission. In Victor's dining room, now converted to a conference space, the small group reviews foundation documents. The legal structure is finalized, Sophia explains, distributing folders to everyone. We've established the foundation as a 501c3 nonprofit with an initial endowment of $10 million from your personal funds, Victor. The mission statement focuses on 3 core areas: legal advocacy for elder autonomy, financial education, to prevent exploitation, and systemic reform of guardianship and power of attorney regulations. Judge Michaels reviews the documents with a practiced eye. This is ambitious but necessary work. In my years on the bench, I saw countless cases where older adults were stripped of agency through technically legal but ethically questionable means. The system desperately needs reform. And that's precisely where we'll focus, I confirm. beginning with proposed legislative changes to power of attorney statutes in this state, then expanding nationally as we build momentum. Beatrice taps her folder thoughtfully. We should consider a public awareness campaign as well. Most people don't think about these issues until they're personally affected, either as elders or adult children. By then, it's often too late to establish proper safeguards. Our discussion continues, detailed and energizing. This is what I've always loved about building something meaningful: the collaborative problem-solving, the sense of creating value that extends beyond personal benefit. The foundation represents more than just a response to my own experience. It's an opportunity to transform a painful chapter into systemic change that might protect others from similar situations. As we conclude the meeting, setting action items and timelines, Samuel calls to inform me that my children have arrived for our scheduled dinner. I find myself both anticipating and apprehensive about the evening ahead. Our relationship remains a work in progress, some days marked by genuine connection, others by the resurfacing of old patterns. Later that evening, Victor's penthouse. Gregory, Vanessa, and Victor are finishing dinner. The foundation launch is progressing faster than I expected, I tell them, as we move from the dining area to the more comfortable seating in the living room. We've already received inquiries from 3 other states interested in our legislative reform model. Gregory nods, his expression showing genuine interest rather than the polite detachment that characterized our early conversations after Pinewood. It's impressive how quickly you've built this, Dad, from concept to functioning organization in just a month. I've had excellent support, I acknowledge. And the mission resonates with many people who've witnessed similar situations in their families. A brief but noticeable silence follows, the unspoken acknowledgement that our own family situation provided the catalyst for this initiative. These moments still occur in our interactions, small pockets of discomfort when the past brushes against our carefully reconstructed present. Vanessa, ever practical, shifts the conversation to more concrete matters. We've completed the financial reconciliation you requested. All funds have been returned to your accounts, including the dissolution of Eagle Vista Properties and the reversal of the main cottage listing. I appreciate that, I respond, noting the lack of resentment in her tone, a significant evolution from the barely concealed anger of our early post-Pinewood discussions. The family therapy sessions, while initially awkward, have created space for honest conversation about expectations, boundaries, and the damage done on all sides. How are things at Reynolds Global? I ask, genuinely curious about their adjustment to their new roles. Both have stepped down from director-level positions as agreed, with Gregory now managing the corporate social responsibility division and Vanessa working in financial compliance, positions that utilize their skills while emphasizing ethical business practices. Different, Gregory admits, but educational. I'm learning aspects of the business I never paid attention to before. The community impact programs, sustainability initiatives, employee wellness. There's meaningful work to be done there, beyond just marketing campaigns. Vanessa's response is more measured. The compliance team is impressively thorough. I'm seeing firsthand how the ethical guardrails you and Mom established actually strengthen the company rather than constrain it. She hesitates, then adds, Warren has been unexpectedly supportive, despite everything. He's provided mentorship without condescension. Warren understands the value of redemption, I reply. He's seen many promising executives stumble and recover throughout his career. What matters is how you respond to failure, not the failure itself. As the evening progresses, we navigate toward the more personal aspects of our evolving relationship. The therapy sessions have taught us to be more direct, to address tensions before they fester into resentments. I visited the house yesterday, I tell them, to select the books and mementos I want to preserve. Their expressions turn cautious. The house remains a sensitive topic. Since my departure from Pinewood, they've suspended their renovation plans pending further discussion about the property's future. Did you find everything you were looking for? Gregory asks carefully. Most of it. Eleanor's collection of first editions, the family photo albums, her grandmother's writing desk. I pause, considering my next words. I've been thinking about the house itself, what it represents and what should happen with it going forward. They exchange glances, clearly anticipating a difficult conversation. I've decided to transfer the deed to both of you, jointly, I continue, surprising them. With certain conditions. First, Eleanor's garden remains preserved as she designed it. Second, a trust will be established to maintain the property appropriately. And third, the library will be restored and donated to the local university as the Eleanor Reynolds Memorial Collection when you eventually sell or significantly alter the property. Their surprise is evident, neither having expected this resolution to the property question that has lingered uncomfortably between us. Dad, are you sure? Vanessa asks. After everything that happened, I'm sure, I confirm. The house represents your childhood, your mother's legacy, and a significant chapter of our family history. It should remain in the family, but with proper guardrails to preserve what matters most. Gregory appears genuinely moved. Thank you. We'll honor those conditions completely. I know you will, I respond, and I mean it. These past weeks have revealed a capacity for growth in both of them that I hadn't fully believed possible. Not instant transformation. There have been setbacks, moments of reverting to old patterns, but genuine effort to understand the impact of their actions and commit to different choices going forward. As we discuss the details of the property transfer, I find myself reflecting on the journey we've navigated since that painful birthday at Pinewood. The betrayal will always remain part of our shared history, an indelible chapter that fundamentally altered our family dynamic. But it hasn't defined our story completely, hasn't prevented us from finding a path toward resolution, if not perfect. Healing! Later, as I walk them to the elevator, Gregory pauses before entering. Dad, I've been meaning to ask, would you consider joining us for dinner next week? At the house? Melissa's parents will be visiting, and I think… He hesitates, choosing his words carefully. I think it would be meaningful to demonstrate that our family remains connected despite the challenges we've faced. The invitation represents more than a simple dinner engagement. It's an opportunity to publicly acknowledge my place in the family, to correct the narrative that led to my exclusion in the first place. I'd be happy to attend, I tell him, recognizing both the effort this invitation represents and the potential awkwardness of the evening ahead. Please let me know if I can bring anything. After they leave, I return to my living room, pouring a small glass of Eleanor's favorite scotch as I gaze out at the city lights. I think about the various resolutions that have emerged from what seemed like irreconcilable betrayal, the foundation that will help others avoid similar situations, the restructured family relationships with clearer boundaries and expectations, my renewed engagement with the company I built. None of these outcomes erase what happened. The pain of being discarded, of discovering my children's willingness to prioritize convenience and financial gain over my autonomy and dignity. These wounds have healed but left permanent scars. Trust, once fundamentally broken, never returns in quite the same form. What's emerged instead is a more clear-eyed relationship, one built on demonstrated behavior rather than assumed loyalty. My phone rings. It's Beatrice, calling to confirm our dinner plans for tomorrow evening. Our friendship has evolved into something neither of us anticipated, a connection based on shared experience and mutual respect that grows more meaningful with each passing week. As I confirm our reservation at the new French bistro downtown, I'm struck by the unexpected gifts that have emerged from crisis. New relationships, new purpose, new clarity about what matters most at this stage of life. They left me in a nursing home on my birthday, believing they could discard me without consequences. Instead, they inadvertently set in motion a series of events that led to greater authenticity, purpose, and self-determination than I've experienced in years. Not the resolution I would have chosen, perhaps, but one that has ultimately led to a life more consciously lived, more deliberately shaped, more truly my own than I had allowed it to become in the years following Eleanor's death. And in that unexpected outcome lies perhaps the most profound resolution of all: the recognition that even our deepest wounds can become doorways to transformation if we have the courage to walk through them with our dignity intact. Close up on Victor's face as he gazes out at the city, showing a complex but peaceful expression, the look of someone who has navigated a difficult journey and emerged changed but whole. Scene opens 6 months later. Victor is addressing an audience at a conference on elder rights and autonomy. The ballroom is filled with attorneys, medical professionals, advocates, and older adults. When my children left me at Pinewood Acres on my 76th birthday, they had no idea I owned the company they worked for. They had no idea I maintained controlling interest in Reynolds Global through a series of holding companies and trusts. They had no idea that their comfortable executive positions, their corporate credibility, their professional identities were ultimately dependent on the very person they were relegating to institutional care. I pause, looking out at the audience. Hundreds of attentive faces, many nodding in recognition of dynamics all too familiar in their professional or personal experience. But this story isn't about revenge, though I admit that was my first instinct. It's not about punishing adult children who made terrible choices, though accountability remains essential in any healthy relationship. Rather, it's about something more fundamental: the right of every person, regardless of age or circumstance, to maintain agency over their own life. Camera pans across the audience, showing Beatrice, Sophia, and Judge Michaels seated in the front row. Gregory and Vanessa are visible near the back of the room. The Reynolds Autonomy Foundation was born from my personal experience, but its mission extends far beyond one family's story. In the 6 months since our launch, we've already helped draft legislation in 5 states to strengthen protections against elder financial exploitation. We've provided direct legal assistance to over 300 older adults facing questionable guardianship proceedings or power of attorney abuses. And we've begun the systematic work of changing how society views aging, not as an inevitable decline into incompetence, but as a continuing journey deserving of dignity and self-determination. As I continue my address, outlining the Foundation's accomplishments and future initiatives, I'm aware of how far I've traveled since that painful birthday 6 months ago. The journey hasn't been easy. Some days still bring flashes of hurt when I recall the casual cruelty of being discarded by my own children. But those moments no longer define or diminish me. They've become part of a larger narrative, one that includes recovery, purpose, and unexpected joy. Later that evening, Victor hosts a small dinner at his penthouse for key Foundation supporters and family. To the Reynolds Autonomy Foundation, Warren proposes a toast, raising his glass. And to Victor, who once again demonstrates that the best leaders transform personal challenges into community solutions. Around my dining table sit an eclectic gathering: Beatrice, now serving as the Foundation's outreach director; Sophia, heading our legal advocacy division; Judge Michaels, chairing our legislative reform committee; Warren, who provides invaluable corporate connections and strategic guidance; and somewhat surprisingly to everyone, including me, Gregory. And Vanessa. My children's journey over these past 6 months has not been without setbacks. There have been moments of backsliding into old patterns, instances of defensiveness when confronted with uncomfortable truths, occasional attempts to minimize the severity of their previous actions. But there has also been genuine growth. Vanessa's increasing engagement with the Foundation's financial education programs, Gregory's unexpected talent for translating complex elder rights issues into accessible public awareness campaigns. We are not the family we were before Pinewood Acres. That relationship, with its unexamined assumptions and unbalanced expectations, could not and should not be restored. But we are finding our way towards something potentially healthier, a family dynamic based on clearer boundaries, mutual respect, and earned rather than assumed trust. After dinner, as conversations break into smaller groups, Gregory approaches, me on the balcony where I've stepped out for a moment of quiet reflection. "Your speech today was powerful, Dad," he says, joining me at the railing, especially the part about agency versus protection, how our efforts to protect older adults can sometimes become mechanisms of control if we don't remain vigilant about preserving autonomy. It's a delicate balance, I acknowledge. One I didn't fully appreciate until experiencing its absence firsthand. He winces slightly at the reference but doesn't retreat from it. Progress compared to earlier months when any mention of Pinewood would trigger immediate defensiveness or subject changes. "I've been thinking a lot about that lately," he continues. "About how quickly I justified making decisions for you rather than with you. How we framed it as protection when it was really about convenience." His candor surprises me. These insights weren't readily apparent in our earlier conversations, suggesting he's continued his own reflection beyond our structured therapy sessions. "What brought this to mind?" I ask. "Melissa's father," he admits. "He's having memory issues," and her mother immediately started talking about memory care facilities and simplifying their living situation. I found myself uncomfortably recognizing the same language, the same justifications we used with you. "And how did you respond?" I suggested we focus first on what support would help him remain independent longer. Home modifications, perhaps part-time assistance, memory tools. Preserving his dignity and choices rather than immediately jumping to institutional solutions. He gives me a rueful smile. Melissa wasn't particularly pleased. She said I was complicating what should be a straightforward decision. I nod, understanding the pattern all too well. It's easier to make decisions for others than to do the harder work of supporting their autonomy through challenges. Easier, but rarely better. We stand in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city lights below. This is the most authentic conversation we've had in months, perhaps in years, without the framework of therapy or the tension of unresolved conflicts dominating the exchange. "I can't change what happened," Gregory says finally. "I can't undo Pinewood or the decisions that led there, but I want you to know I'm trying to learn from it, to be better moving forward, both with you and with others in my life." The simple statement, delivered without strategic positioning or self-justification, feels like the most meaningful amends he's offered since our reconciliation began. "That's all any of us can do," I reply. "Learn, grow, make better choices moving forward." The gathering eventually concludes, guests departing with warm goodbyes. After everyone leaves, I sit alone in my living room, reflecting on the day's events and the journey of these past months. On my coffee table sits a leather-bound journal, a gift from Beatrice when I first outlined the foundation concept. I've been using it to document not just the organization's development, but my own evolving thoughts about aging, autonomy, and the unexpected chapter of life that began at Pinewood. Acres opening to a blank page, I begin to write. 6 months ago, I believed my life was effectively over. Not literally. I knew I would continue breathing, eating, existing. But I thought the meaningful chapters had concluded. My wife was gone, my career was behind me, and my children had demonstrated they viewed me primarily as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected. Could never have imagined then where this journey would lead, not just to reclaiming what was taken, but to discovering entirely new purpose, connections, and joys I hadn't known were possible at this stage of life. Perhaps that's the most important wisdom I've gained. Life never stops offering opportunities for meaning, growth, and contribution if we remain open to them. Even our deepest wounds can become sources of transformation if we refuse to be defined by victimhood or bitterness. They left me in a nursing home on my birthday, believing they were closing a chapter of inconvenience. Instead, they inadvertently opened a door to one of the most purposeful periods of my life, one where I'm not just Victor Reynolds, founder of Reynolds Global or father of Gregory and Vanessa, but simply Victor, a man continuing to evolve, to contribute, to discover new dimensions of himself at 76. This isn't the final chapter I would have chosen, but it may well be proving the most authentic, the one where pretense has been stripped away, where relationships are based on truth rather than obligation, where purpose arises from lived experience rather than external expectations. If there's anything worth sharing from this journey, perhaps it's this: our value never diminishes with age, only society's perception of it. Our right to self-determination never expires, though others may try to restrict it. Our capacity for growth, contribution, and joy remains present until our final breath, if we have the courage to claim it. And perhaps most importantly, it's never too late to reclaim your voice, your autonomy, your inherent dignity. It's never too late to transform betrayal into purpose. It's never too late to begin again. As I close the journal, I gaze out at the city lights. Tomorrow brings another full day, a meeting with legislators about proposed guardianship reforms, lunch with Beatrice to discuss our upcoming educational symposium, dinner with an old colleague who's expressed interest in supporting the Foundation's work. My life now bears little resemblance to what I envisioned during those first dark days at Pinewood. It's busier, more purposeful, more authentically aligned with my values than it had been for years before my children's betrayal forced this reckoning. I think of Eleanor occasionally, not with the paralyzing grief that characterized the years immediately following her death, but with a gentle, appreciative remembrance. She would approve of this unexpected chapter, I believe. She always did value authenticity above comfort, purpose above passive acceptance. They left me in a nursing home on my birthday. I speak softly to the empty room. The phrase that once carried such pain now transformed into something closer to recognition of a pivotal moment. But that ending became a beginning I never could have imagined. And perhaps that's the final wisdom worth sharing, that our darkest moments, our most painful betrayals, our most devastating losses, these are not necessarily the conclusion of our stories. They can instead be the catalysts that propel us toward our most authentic selves if we have the courage to move through the pain rather than becoming defined by it. At 76, I've discovered that life continues to offer surprises, challenges, opportunities for growth and contribution. Not despite my age, but in some ways because of it, because of the perspective, resilience, and clarity that can only come from decades of living, losing, learning, and beginning again. They left me in a nursing home on my birthday, and in doing so, they inadvertently gave me the most valuable gift of all, the opportunity to reclaim not just my company, my finances, and my autonomy, but my essential self. Final close-up on Victor's face, showing peaceful determination, wisdom born of difficulty, and the quiet satisfaction of a man who has traversed a painful journey and emerged not just intact, but transformed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.